radiologists and physician groups about how to use the QCDR, or the Qualified Clinical Data Registry, for PQRS participation. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's webinar. This is our 5th webinar that we're offering for radiologists and physician group practices to help you learn about how to use our QCDR most effectively. Today's talk is being brought to you by myself, Alicia Blakey. I'm also accompanied by a number of our staff. Everyone on today's webinar is in listen-only mode. We do invite you to remain engaged throughout, so if you have question and answers, please use the question and answer feature, which should be on the panel on your screen. Feel free to submit us any questions. If you need clarification, staff will be responding to you as I speak. At the conclusion of my presentation slides, we will be sure to leave a little bit of time allocated for additional question and answers that haven't been covered. Let us go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is titled Avoid Costly Errors, How to Submit PQRS Data Accurately. What we will cover today will focus, as a reminder, not everyone that joins today's call is actually using the QCDR. So we want to be sure that on all of our webinars we give you what the QCDR reporting requirements are. There are different requirements if you are doing individual or physician group reporting. We will also cover available measures and data submission mechanisms, registry tips for PQRS participation, and then today we spent a lot of time giving you content on the past 4 webinars, and we're going to try to do a live demo to show you exactly what our NRDR and PQRS portals, some of the key features and what it looks like. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with QCDR feedback, our timeline, and next steps. So for anyone who is wondering what is a QCDR, we are a Qualified Clinical Data Registry. CMS has awarded the ACR's registries to be approved to collect data for the purposes of quality improvement. We are, in fact, a Qualified Clinical Data Registry. We've been operating in this capacity since 2014, so we're 2016. We're excited to be approved again. And essentially, sites like yourself and your groups will submit data to our various registries, and then through that process, we'll analyze data for you and then package it so that it's submitted to CMS at a later time. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to reference a lot of content, but I do want to reference everyone to the webinar link that's here, the web link, sorry, that's on your slide. This is our main hub where we have everything related to the Qualified Clinical Data Registry, measures, pricing, setup, etc. So now I think it's important that we transition. I say that the ACR has been approved, our registries, but let's look at how our registries are categorized and what registries are actually available. We'll spend just 5 minutes on this slide. Most of you should be familiar that the ACR's registries are titled under the umbrella of National Radiology Data Registries. Throughout today's presentation, I will reference NRDR. And essentially, all of the databases or registries that exist under our umbrella are listed here for your viewing. And I would just let you know that each of these registries do in fact have a subset of measures that can be used for PQRS reporting. That is the reason for PQRS being in the center of all of this. We want to, of course, there is a menu option of registries. Every facility or group is not required to participate in all registries. I would say all of them are pretty much, we have good user feedback, and people have been using our registries since about 2009. So the PQRS is kind of an added enhancement to our existing registries. So let's look at some more information on why do you even want to consider using a QCDR. These bullet points are here for your reading. I am not going to read each and every bullet point for you, but we will make the presentation slides and the webinar recording available at the end of today's talk. Essentially, you're going to use the QCDR to submit your PQRS measures. That includes both PQRS and non-PQRS measures. The non-PQRS measures are developed by the ACR and are definitely more applicable to the care that radiologists provide. Additionally, we provide direct assistance with compiling the needed data for quality improvement throughout the reporting year. And then essentially we will provide you feedback to all of the registry participants. And for the QCDR specific participants, we give you the feedback at least quarterly. And most importantly, we allow physicians to review and select measures that they would like submitted to CMS. So I think it's important that we just talk about the PQRS reporting requirements. If you are doing claims-based reporting or if you use a different registry in the past, using the Qualified Clinical Data Registry does have additional requirements that differ from those existing processes. Essentially, as a QCDR, we do have the benefit of supporting either individual providers or physician group practices who have signed up with CMS to be a group. The reporting requirements are here for your reading. Essentially, we ask that regardless of individual provider or group reporting, that you report at least 9 measures across 3 NQS domains. Of those 9 measures, at least 2 of them should be outcome measures. And of all the data that you submit to our registry, you have to submit it on at least 50% of all of your patients. That includes Medicare and non-Medicare patients. One caveat to just make note, I've spoken with a lot of the attendees on today's webinar, but for anyone who is new, if you are doing a group practice reporting option, each individual physician does not have to meet 9 measures. It's across every physician that bills to your tax ID. So essentially, across your entire group, you only need to report 9 measures, 3 domains, and 2 outcomes. And that's, of course, for 50% of the group's patients. And essentially, why you're even participating in this process is, one, for quality improvement and to enhance patient care, but you will, by your participation in our registries, you will avoid anywhere from a negative 2% to a 6% negative payment adjustment. Essentially, there's payment adjustments tied to if you do not participate in the PQRS or the volume modifier program. So I think it's important that we look at the high-level QCDR process. Essentially, to make the most use of any of our registries, we do ask that you create an account with our NRDR registries. The first step would be to consider to view all available measures and select the appropriate registries that matches your practice pattern. So we have 5 different data registries that you can sign up for, or databases, and it's not required that you participate in all of them. Step 2, you need to tell us what physicians you would like to submit data for so that we know how to attribute the PQRS measures and whether or not they even want to participate in PQRS. We have a function to capture this information, and it's called Manage Physician. Through this Manage Physician process, there will be a question that asks you, would you like to enroll your physicians in PQRS? The next step is very important. At step 3, add physician group 10 and submit any supporting documentation. In our NRDR portal, we do have functionalities that we will need to capture for every facility, regardless if you're doing individual or group participation. We will need a valid tax ID number, essentially the number that's used for your professional services and how you bill Medicare Part B. Step 4, we're going to transition to start submitting measure data. So there is a little bit of setup required to get registered. Tell us who your physicians are, how do you bill Medicare, and then you're going to go ahead and start submitting data. The star on this slide indicates with our NRDR registry process, we do have multiple user types. I do not want anyone to be alarmed. Your physician is not required to complete all 4 of these steps that are indicated on the slide. We do call out that the facility administrator user role or user type is the main person who kind of sets up the account and can actually submit measure data on behalf of the physician. Essentially, each of these 4 steps is critical to successfully participating in our registry. If at any time you need any help or you need resources with any step of that process, or just in general how to use our registries for PQRS participation, we do have a participation checklist. We do encourage both first-time users to make use of the checklist and also existing users. If you're a first-time user, there are certain things that are required to get you an NRDR account. Essentially, we'll need participation agreements between your facility and the ACR. And then we have user guide manuals to give you information on how to add your physicians and how to add your tax ID information. If you are an existing user of any of the registries or you have participated in our QCDR in prior years, as I mentioned, we were a QCDR since 2014, your registration setup is not required. It's only kind of a one-time thing, so you can focus more on submitting us current data for the performance period. I think it's important that we look at, when I talk about submitting measures data, let's not keep that so general. Let's look specifically at what measures are available and what different options you have to participate. Essentially, all of our registry participants are allowed to submit both PQRS and non-PQRS measures to be successful. Just one more reminder that non-PQRS measures are chosen from across our NRDR registries. Essentially, we have two catalogs of measures that you can select from. We have our PQRS supported measures, and those essentially are your claims-based measures that you've been reporting for the PQRS program since about 2007, so fluoroscopy time, reminder system measures, etc. What's really new and what's causing some people to make use of our registry is actually the non-PQRS measures, because they are developed by the college, and they're supposed to be representative of more of your services. Those come directly from the registry, so these are registry-specific measures. Looking at both of these lists, we have over 65 measures that a radiologist or their administrator can select from to help you meet the 9-measure 3-domain requirement. Because we have so many measures, and every radiologist may practice in a different area or specialize in a specific modality, we have created a tool called a measure selection tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet that will help you tabulate what measures are most relevant to your practice area. Just going to tab through this next slide very quickly, but just to give you a sense of, and in addition to just telling you what measures are available, we do give you the CMS reporting instructions. They're called specification manuals. We give you that in a document for all of our PQRS measures. We tell you what the measure is, what the domain is. That's very important to help you meet the reporting requirement. And one other important note is that the PQRS measures do change annually. So annually there may be changes to the measure description, or there may be code changes that you should be aware of, but the ACR and the QCDR will be sure that we provide you the most recent information. And out of the 65 measures, 41 of those measures are PQRS-related measures. For the non-PQRS measures, we do have a list of 24 measures that could be used for PQRS participation. We give you documentation on what that measure is, what the description is, and of course the domains, right? The domains is very important for 2016 reporting. And then most importantly, where does that measure fall under the NRDR menu options? So all of our non-PQRS measures have AC-RAD in front of them so that you know they are developed by the college and are specifically used for PQRS reporting. Let's just very quickly, this is a summary slide. If you attended any of our previous webinars, we do like to highlight exactly from the non-PQRS measures how many measures are available by database. So the CTC registry has only 2 measures, but NMD, DIR, GRID, and GRID do have 6 measures that can be used for PQRS participation. So you can see it should not be difficult for anyone to meet that 9-measure 3-domain requirement if you're doing individual reporting, and it becomes even more simple if you sign up to be a G-Pro. I think it's important now that we've talked about kind of what the reporting requirements are, what is the essence of the QCDR, what measures are available. I think it's a good time to transition into exactly how do we collect this data. We have 2 sets of measures that you select from. Essentially, we're going to focus on the PQRS measures. We're going to focus on this process first. Essentially, you are going to submit any of your claims-based measures to us through our NRDR platform. And essentially, we give you Excel templates that will show you exactly what fields are required, what measure information that you need to give us. And we also give you specifications, is essentially explaining what each field means. In all files, they can be uploaded to our PQRS physician portal. Not to worry about the terminology. We're actually going to do a live demo in a short while looking at the NRDR and the physician portals. And then most importantly, the user type who's going to be handling this data or submitting it to us is going to be the facility administrator or the registry administrator. All of the templates are downloadable on our website and free for public access. So when I say data elements, give us the data, I just wanted to give you a summary slide of exactly some of the information that we do require on the measure. We require information for both the patient and, of course, the physician. We need to know if the patient, their age, their gender. Information on your provider. It's very important that you give us the provider's NPI and tax ID information. And then for the measure, we need to know what measure you're trying to report to us, which CPT code your provider billed, etc. And then most importantly on this slide, we did put together a resource for you called the CPT denominator and numerator codes. Essentially, in layman's terms, the numerator code is the code indicated by CMS that shows that the provider has met performance for that measure. It's normally a 5-digit code. We'll look through that process a little bit later. But I just want to call out the Excel file for you if you're wondering what are the codes or what changes have been made. We have pulled together all that information for you. Next, we're going to focus on our non-PQRS measures. Essentially, the non-PQRS measures are handled differently than the claims-based measures. I put in claims-based measures because even if you started submitting the PQRS measures via claims, you will need to resubmit that data for our registry, so keep that in mind. For our non-PQRS measures, they are very much driven by the registry that they belong to. We collect data in 4 different ways. We can collect data manually. It could be an automated process. You can upload a file, such as we just looked at with the PQRS measures, or we have web-based services where we actually do have a few vendors who are approved to assist radiology practices in collecting this information from your billing system. So part of our registration to the NRDR registries, we have some terminology used frequently on calls and when I'm speaking with a lot of you. But I just wanted to clarify that for facilities that have multiple locations, you will need to set up your registration to be have a master-child relationship. The master facility will be a corporate account essentially used for billing and kind of keeping track of your child facilities. So anything related to your invoices will be held under your master account. And then your child facilities are the specific locations or sites, the imaging, right, where the imaging is happening, that's a part of your group. So essentially if you have, we have a lot of hybrid accounts where we have a master account and under that they may have 20 or more facilities. If you're most radiologists are reading at more than one facility, so this master child setup is important. And most importantly, we want to call out where do you submit the data. So on this slide is information on by registry, which facility account type should you be using. You can see a majority of the non-PQRS measures, they should be submitted to the child facility. And calling out a special note for the DIR registry, you do submit data at the master level, but it's important that your facility has been able to match each of the scanners to the child facilities. We'll probably repeat that again later on. And then for the grid, it's very important this database does collect information at the facility level. But if you want to use grid measures, and that's related to turnaround time, if you have any turnaround time measures, we do ask that you submit it at the exam level. And then for PQRS, we submit the data to whatever facility makes sense. Where is your physician enrolled in PQRS? It could be either a master facility or a child facility. These next few slides, I'm going to go a little bit quickly because we do want to make sure that we leave enough time for the live demo, and especially for question and answers. As a reminder, if you have a question about anything that I am stating so far, please feel free to use the questions functionality on the WebEx. Essentially, if you have, I know we have 5 different registries. We do give you documentation for each registry. There is a different data submission process for your PQRS measures to be attributed to your physicians. Let's look at a few registry tips because we have 3 years of experience, and myself as well as our registry staff, we're on the phone with some of you guys, and so we are gathering feedback on how to improve the system. But I think these tips can help at least get you to be more successful and spend less time on fixing any errors or anything that's just not working properly. So the first bullet, essentially, we want you to add PQRS registry to the facility where you will submit PQRS measure data. It is not required that you, it's not a requirement that you use our registries for PQRS participation. We do have kind of 2 waves of people participating in our registry. Some people are just doing it for quality improvement, but if you do want to do it for PQRS, please let us know. For any master child accounts, we ask that you add physicians to the NRDR and enroll them in PQRS. In this area, it is required that you give us the NPI number. And then also for any master child accounts, we do need your tax ID information. As a reminder, it's the tax ID number that's used for your professional services. And if you are reporting as a G-Pro, you went through a registration process with CMS, and that process wrapped up June of this year. We do ask that you let us know that you're actually a G-Pro because it will affect how we analyze your measure data that's submitted to us. We analyze it to see whether or not you're meeting the PQRS reporting requirements, and it differs for individual or group reporting. So let us know that information. And then in order to use our physician portal, physicians do need to complete a slight registration process, essentially just a few check boxes to let us know that you do give the ACR permission to submit your data to CMS. And then lastly, physicians, they are reading at multiple locations and they may be tied to different NRDR accounts. And we just want you to be aware that your physicians are not being charged more than once. If they're tied to 15 locations, they're not getting charged 15 times. And then most importantly, each physician has one login across all of their NRDR information. The next, and these are just a few more tips that are continued, but focus more specifically on each of the registries. So for PQRS measures, we ask that you do submit us claims information using the templates that we provide on our website, and the reporting period is January 1 through December 31st of 2016. A lot of you have given me questions about this. They're going to, continue their claims process and then only submit us registry-based measures. That is incorrect. We do need you to submit both measure types to us. For the GRID registry, it's specific, as I mentioned, there is opportunity for you to submit facility level data, but it's very important for PQRS participation that you give us only exam level information. Our NMD and lung cancer screening registry, it's very important that you be aware that the reporting period for these particular measures is 2 years worth of data. So instead of giving us information from January 1, 2016, you will need to give us January 1, 2015's information. Essentially, these are cancer detection rates and looking at positive predictive values, and so we do need 12 months worth of follow-up. And then for the DIR registry, it does require you to have a Triad software installation, and you must map your exam names and also your CT scanners. I know this is a mouthful, so please feel free to submit your questions if anything sounds unclear. And then just last note for PQRS participation in general, we do need you to submit data for at least 50% of all of your patients. That's both Medicare and non-Medicare patients. And if you're doing the G-Pro reporting option, give us 50% of your group's patients. And then lastly, the common question that I always get, so I'm participating in these registries, I have the accounts, I'm submitting all this measure data, how is the actual measures actually attributed to my physician? Essentially, it's two magic numbers that help us aggregate all of the data that you submit to us. We'll use your either your NPI or your text ID number, and essentially we'll be able to pull all of the PQRS and non-PQRS measures available to each physician or your physician group if you're doing group reporting. And all of the measures can be or are visible in our PQRS physician portal. So I think now is a good time to go ahead and transition over to our NRDR portals and our physician portals, if you just allow us a few seconds to make that transition. Please allow me to go ahead and get re-logged in. I'm sure I have been logged out by this time. Essentially, I'm going to go to nrdr.acr.org. That is how you enter our portal. As I mentioned in our slides, the facility administrator is the person who is managing the accounts. You are registering all of your facilities or for your physician group. And essentially, you can even submit data. So I'm going to actually log in as a facility administrator. You see that here. I am going to just want to reference that any information that I show visible today is only test data. Nothing is real live data for any physician. And so let me go ahead and get logged in. So it looks like I am logged in. I'm just going to spend some time looking through a few tabs on the NRDR platform to really help you kind of know what you're registered for, what registries are you participating in, and then also looking at how do you add your physicians and how do you add your group text ID information. For the essence of today's demo, we are not going to add all of that information. We've done the work ahead of time for you. So a facility administrator has multiple tabs, and you should see everything that I would see. So the first thing I do when I'm on the call with any site, I want to know what registries are you participating in. Are you even participating in PQRS, and kind of has your registration been accepted? So at any time, if you need to add a registry or you need to change a registry, you would do that in this registration field. Essentially, we will need information on how many radiologists you have for your facility, what type of exams do they perform, and then how many locations. Right now, for my test facility, I only have one location, but we do have sites who may have multiple locations that the doctor reads for. Essentially, if you hit continue, you will see information on what you're registered for, which registry or database you're participating in, how many physicians you've assigned to that registry, and then most importantly, you'll see information about fees. And then it's very important, so when I get a lot of calls, a lot of sites, they have participated in one or more of our registries in the past, and they didn't have any indication that they wanted to do PQRS participation. So it's very important that under PQRS, it's visible on your registration tab. The next feature that I wanted to spend some time on is looking under facility administrator, facility management, excuse me. We have a process to collect all of your physicians' information. I just clicked here on Manage Physicians. Essentially, you can either populate a form, and I'll scroll down. I did do some of the work ahead of time because we don't want to add spend too much time on this today. But essentially, you can complete a form which will ask you kind of information about your doctor, And most importantly, the NPI is required if you're doing the PQRS or the lung cancer screening registries. Essentially, you will save your information. Before even saving your information, make sure you let us know if you want your physician to be enrolled in PQRS. That's very important. A lot of people skip over that, so go ahead and check yes if that is in fact what you wish to do. And essentially, if you have a lot of physicians, more than 5, more than 15, we do recommend that you download our Excel template here at the top of your browser. You populate the same information that is visible in this table, and it will actually upload or refresh your table for you. So for my test facility, I do have 23 physicians. The next tab that we're going to look at right under Managed Physicians is Managed Physician Group 10. This is the area, remember, how we attribute all of your measures, whether it's registry-based measure or whether it's a claims measure. We do need information on your tax ID, regardless if you're doing individual or group reporting. Essentially, you will give us your tax ID number. For today's demo, I'll go ahead and just enter a test record. Essentially, for my tax ID, I do want to be a G-Pro. So I am a G-Pro. This is where you indicate, you let us know, are you a group reporter or not? Are you doing group reporting or not? Excuse me. Your tax ID number is very important for attributing your measures, and so we need to know what facilities are actually billing Medicare using that tax ID number. So if you only have one location, you will just check one box. If you have 17 locations, they will all appear here. You can assign, if you have only one tax ID number, you can assign that to every facility. The same is true. We need to know which registries are you participating in. By default, our system selects all of the registries. I would ask, if you are not participating in any registry, be sure to unselect that information. The next fields, and this gives people a lot of headache, is the date available from. Essentially, these fields are representative of when did your tax ID number become active for your site. So it could be 10 years ago, whatever the date is. If you can give us an estimate start date, we just need to make sure that you are billing Medicare using that tax ID number. So I'm just going to put in 1/12, let's do 1995. Oops, that's not working. And please be sure that it's 2-digit month, 2-digit day, and then 4-digit year. And then for the available to, this is when your tax ID number is no longer available. You can put a date range in here, but if you're planning to use the registry for more than one reporting year, I would recommend that you just leave the field blank. We can fill in information later. I'm essentially going to click this Add button. As you can see, we've tested this facility a lot, and so you can see my tax ID was all 8, and it has been applied to each of the registries as well as each of my facilities. It takes you only about 2 seconds to add that information. We do want you to make sure that you save it, because if you close out or go back, all your information will be lost. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier that we do need tax ID information for all of your, we need documentation to show that your TIN is valid. So essentially, we ask you to upload either a tax document or submit a claim, something that has that information, so that we can go ahead and be sure and also, meet our reporting requirements as a QCDR, make sure we're checking that your information is valid. Essentially, we have an upload button. You can upload an Excel, a JPEG, or a PDF file. I think most people are actually uploading a PDF file. So this is kind of a summary or high level of our NRDR portal. Essentially, I'm focused on those 3 key features of adding your physicians, looking at what registries you're assigned for, and then giving us your tax ID information. If you are participating in any of the databases to submit non-PQRS measures, you would look under registries, and for each registry you can go to that tab and submit or upload any of your files or enter patient exam information, whatever is required. So you do everything in the NRDR portal. I think it's important that we spend a few minutes talking about our physician portal. We've talked a lot about, it's called a physician portal, but the facility administrator, a registry administrator, all user types will have access to the physician portal, and you will be able to view measures in that interface. How we get access to the physician portal is by clicking on right under the registries, as I mentioned. At the bottom of it is PQRS measure participation. This essentially is going to take you to a new interface. You're going to have different tabs, and of course information about our QCDR. I would say most people probably skip over that text, but it's there for your reading. And then to view any measure information, remember I'm a facility administrator, so yes, it's a physician portal, but anyone can access it. I'm going to click on data collection and report. And the information does enter in a new tab, so you don't have to wait too long for it to load. Essentially, I am a facility administrator. On this screen, and everyone else will have access to look at who your physicians are, whether or not they're registered for the portal. Remember I said you can't submit any PQRS measures or to our physician portal if your physician is not registered. We do have user guides and templates to explain all of these processes, but I'm walking through it because it's easier to kind of show what you're going to do so that you don't have to sift through a lot of pages. And essentially the last column here is going to show you your text ID information, whether or not if you don't have text ID information, that is a problem. You would need to go back into the NRDR portal and make sure you add that information. For the purpose of today's talk, I'm going to focus, you do see several tabs here, but I'm going to focus on the upload data, CMS submission, and performance report tabs. Currently, our system, before you can upload any data for any physician, you need to let us know what physician you're trying to submit data for. So at this time, you do have to search by individual physicians, but for the physician groups, we are building functionality that will be available in a few weeks where you can actually see everything rolled up by your text ID number. So essentially there will be a box under physician that says text ID number, and then you'll be able to see all of your physicians, but that's to come. So I am going to look up a physician, Viola Cheng, because I have added some test information to this doctor. So essentially, in this location, you will be submitting, just to clarify, you will be submitting your PQRS claims-based measures using our templates that have been provided on our website, and it's also here in the portal for you. Essentially, it's very easy. We're going to click the browse button, we're going to find a file, and then you're going to click upload. When you upload, you will get a status of whether or not your file was successful or rejected or pending. So you can see from this account, I do have information for this particular provider. I've uploaded multiple spreadsheets. Some of them have been successful and some of them have been rejected. This spreadsheet is going to help us know which measure should be attributed to the physician that we selected at the top. So for facility administrators who are managing the G-Pro submission, we will make it more smooth for you so that you can look at all your physicians at one time, but it's just not available yet. So we're going to do one physician at a time. Essentially, I do want to download just one file to show you exactly how we collect the data on PQRS measures. And you all probably don't remember, but I did tell you kind of what data elements are required. So essentially, we have, and remember, all this data is fictitious, it is not real. We have the doctor's text ID information and all of that. We have information about the patient. They are 500. That's the patient ID, sorry. Each patient needs to have a unique ID so that we can audit the information. Their age, their gender, and then I'm going to skip on over a few columns to I, where we're looking at information about the measure. What measure number is it? What CPT code did you bill? And most importantly, the numerator response, which tells us whether or not performance was met or not met for that measure. For any PQRS measures, it's very important to know that we do calculate a reporting rate and a performance rate for each measure. So any information that you give us on patients is helping us know what patient population you've done your quality improvement on, and who have you performed the clinical action. And so essentially, right, the whole purpose of using our registry is you're going to give us data, you're going to look at your measures, but the essence is that we submit it to CMS on your behalf. We do not submit this data monthly or quarterly. Just to clarify, we submit data to CMS at the end of the reporting year. We have a timeline of March of 2017 that will happen. But in preparation for that submission in March, let us go ahead. I just want to show you some of the functionality of this tab. So as you can see, our system doesn't take a lot of time to browse because I don't have a lot of records. So essentially you see information about the physician, you see the current reporting rate, and then voila, you start to see your text ID information and what measures have been submitted for that text ID. So this doctor is submitting information on the fluoro measure. They are selecting this measure for PQRS participation, and they are giving us 100% of their exams. If you are not giving us 100% of your exams, we do give you the space to add a particular number. These values are very important as we calculate your measure to see whether or not performance was met or your reporting rate was met. Remember, PQRS is focused on the reporting rate of you need to submit data on at least 50% of all of your patients, and that's for the entire reporting year. Lastly, we're going to look at our performance report, right? Everybody wants to see, okay, the CMS submission tab and the performance report kind of interrelate. If you do not select any measures, you will not see anything on your performance tab. So I did select a few measures, and as you can see for this doctor, I do have multiple text IDs. So if you have multiple TINs, our system can accommodate that information, and we will break out which measures have been submitted for which TIN for each doctor. Essentially, in this graph, you can see that we do have PQRS measures listed at the top. And then also this doctor is participating in non-PQRS measures. They're participating in the National Mammography Database, AC-RADS 3 through 8, and they're also participating in our lung cancer screening registry, AC-RAD 21. And then also they are submitting a measure on GRID turnaround time for x-rays. So you can see the values, and the most important columns is this reporting rate and performance rates. So you can see whether or not the measure was met, who the patients are, and then the last column is whether or not you want this information to be selected for CMS submission. You are not required to submit all of the measures that you give us data on. You are not required to let CMS see that information. So if you have a low performance rate or not a lot of exams, we ask that you just indicate yes or no if you don't want CMS to see that. I think that's all I have as far as the physician portal. I just will make a note that just one more reminder that for the groups, this is our first year supporting group practices, and so we will build functionality where you can give us files on all of your physicians for your group, and you can monitor their performance in the physician portal more streamlined. Let's change this back to the view. So it's important to note the physician portal is one avenue where you can view your QCDR performance. You can look at what measures your doctor has been submitting exams for, but we also do quarterly feedback reports. Our next feedback report is Q3, and it will be issued in November, and that's for the data collection period of July through September. It's very important to know that our QCDR participants you can download your QCDR feedback reports at any time from the NRDR interface. And essentially, if you did not submit any data for these collection periods, you will not have information in your registry. Lastly, this is just a sample of kind of our DIR report. We have 6 measures that are available for the DIR. You can see all of the performance for your physicians aggregated in one file. The same is true for our GRID registry. Each registry has their own report that is communicated to our QCDR participants, and you can see your measures. We do have everything that I've covered. We have user guides, tutorials, we have participation checklists, everything. We've developed a nice website to kind of aggregate all of our information in one place related to the QCDR. And then most importantly for everybody on this call is kind of the timelines. We need to, be mindful that we are submitting your data to CMS in March, but we do have some intermediate deadlines that we would like you to meet to make sure that we have enough data and that we help you be successful in meeting those reporting requirements. The deadlines are here for your reference. I would just recommend if there's anyone who is using the registries and maybe not doing PQRS participation, the deadline to make the final decision to let us know if you want to use NRDR for PQRS participation is October 31st. And we do ask that by this time you start at least submitting data to the ACR, because we will need to give CMS a full year's worth of data, and it'll reduce the burden on you if you started that process early on, looking at registration and all of that. And essentially, our timeline, we're moving towards a March 31st of 2017 deadline. So keep these deadlines in mind. And then just a few takeaway points. I know we have about 10 minutes for questions, so I'm going to wrap this up very quickly. Core to successful participation in any of our registries, whether you're doing it for PQRS or not, is the facility administrator. This is the person who sets up the account. These are the people who add the information about your physicians and their text ID. Be sure that you are submitting enough measure data to meet the PQRS reporting requirements. Remember, it is a 9-measure 3-domain requirement, but if you're doing individual or group reporting, the measure requirements do differ. Remember that data should be submitted frequently to ensure that you have your feedback reports are meaningful and you actually have data. If you don't submit us data, then you won't be able to make great use of that feedback report. And lastly, if you are still deciding is the QCDR right for you, we ask that you do go ahead and register with us by October 31st. And then if you are already in the registry and maybe you haven't been participating in the PQRS capacity, by any means you can add an additional registry or submit us data using the NRDR portals and the interface. And as I mentioned, this is our 5th webinar. We're trying to offer webinars monthly to educate you on all of the nuances of how our registry operates for PQRS, and make sure you're lined up so that you're submitting as much information as possible and you're being successful throughout the process. Our next webinar is Friday, October 14th, making the most of the QCDR. And we are open to feedback on additional topics, or if you need office hours, our staff is available to provide assistance. Here's my contact information. And we do have a hotline. I think I forgot to mention it in previous webinars, but we do have a hotline. And you want to pick the specific option that's meaningful to you. So if you have registration agreement questions, you can get to the correct person at the right time. We're going to go ahead and we have about 9 minutes for questions. Apologies for going a little bit over, but I did want to make sure that I spend some time demoing exactly what the portal is and the functionality.
This is Judy Burleson. So we've had a number of questions so far. which I am trying to get to answer all of them and haven't yet. One question is, well, there's been several questions about the need or the requirement to report measured data for non-Medicare patients. So currently, CMS requirements are, when using a qualified clinical data registry, QCDR, that all patients, non-Medicare and Medicare, must be reported on. When using other mechanisms, such as a qualified registry, which is different from a QCDR, you're only required to report Medicare patients. So that is a different requirement for QCDRs. There was a proposal by CMS in the macro proposed rule for the quality payment programs to require reporting on non-Medicare patients for other mechanisms. That can't be done for claims, obviously, but that is the requirement that all patients are reported on. Another question, just for clarification, the non-PQRS measures are what ACR requires. Is this a new requirement of the PQRS reporting by CMS this year? So the non-PQRS measures can only be reported through a QCDR. The non-PQRS measures in the ACR, QCDR, can only be reported using that QCDR. So they are not a requirement. If you use a QCDR, you choose which measures that you can report or want to report from either the non-PQRS measures or the PQRS measures in order to meet the 9-measure 3-domain requirement. So if you are reporting using a qualified registry, you can't report the non-PQRS measures, nor can you if you're reporting through claims.
Thank you for that explanation, Judy.
I have some sort of facility-specific questions from a number of people, which I'm trying to get to answer separately. Here's a question on a group that has a radiologist just joining them in October. They are reporting GPRO for 2016 under the group practice reporting option. And the question is, when submitting measures for this new radiologist, does the group indicate that they're submitting 100% if that new radiologist is only with them for a partial year? So you are saying yes to the percentage of exams submitted for that 10 NPI. So if the new radiologist is only with you for 3 months and you're submitting 100% of their data under your 10 for those 3 months, then that is 100%. And another question, if we are reporting on both PQRS as well as QCDR measures, does the PQRS measure have to be for all patients and not just Medicare? Yes, that is correct. All patients. Another question here on when managing the 10 numbers, does the master facility have to be listed along with the child site? Not sure what that question is about exactly, so Angelica, if you could rephrase that, I would appreciate it. Question about lung cancer screening registry measures, and this I guess might also apply to National Mammography Database. The question is, you must report 2015 and 2016 data. What if your facility is only collecting the minimum info as required by CMS, so not reporting on all questions that the registry asks? How does this affect our reporting? So if the data elements that you're submitting are the ones that are used to calculate the measures, the lung cancer screening measures that are in the QCDR, like cancer detection rate and 2 others, then you would be able to report it if you have data going retrospectively to 2015, because those measures have a look-back period to determine the cancer detection rate, for example. So if you look at the measure specification data elements, and if you're submitting data for each of those, then the measure can be calculated and you could report it. That's about it for ones that I have answered so far.
If anyone has any additional questions that are not answered on this, some of them are site-specific. If you call our hotline or email us, we can look through your and make sure you give us your facility ID number, and we can address any additional site-specific questions you have. Guess I'll go ahead. I don't see any more questions coming in the queue. I'll just thank everyone for their participation in today's webinar. We will make the presentation slides and the webinar recording available to you via email. We'll send it to all attendees, and then we also post it on our QCDR webpage, so you can see today's presentation or any that you have missed in the past. In essence, this webinar will not be our only one, and so on all of our this is an educational series, and we're trying to give you tips and tricks so that we can help you be successful in the in meeting the PQRS reporting requirements, but making sure that you are submitting us the correct data through the various processes. We hope that this was somewhat helpful. Feel free to send us any feedback or additional questions to the contact information on this slide. Thank you.